Now the ignition system on this CT175 doesn't have a key. It's missing, who knows where it is. I've kind of jumped ahead so that I could pre-disassemble this and show you what I did to get into here. I still haven't quite figured out what I'm going to do for a key. Essentially, this has 4 slots here for these tumblers, and each one of these tumblers has a small spring that goes down in that round hole. This 5th one here is for what looks like a tumbler, or I don't even know if these are considered tumblers, but this locks the whole mechanism in place. And basically when this goes through the body here, it only goes one way. So as you place it in there and you twist it, eventually it'll fall in so that this is flush. And then on the back side, right in here, there's a ridge that is on the inside of this body itself, and that last tab, because it's spring loaded, will pop out and it'll ride on that ridge and keep this whole lock assembly from falling out. So I've gone ahead and I pushed it in and lined up all of the pins to one of these corresponding slots down inside of here, and you can see that there's one of them that goes from the front to the back. So when you twist that spindle and you line up all those tumblers, depress that locking tumbler, you can slide the whole thing out. And as you do, be careful, because these are going to want to come flying out of this mechanism itself. And I think the way that this is set up, it has 3 positions. It has an off, and a start, and then an on or accessory for your lights. I'm not 100% sure on that. That's kind of the way things are shaken out. Also within this lock assembly is a set of contacts here that make contact with the wiring bundle here. This wiring bundle has a small notch and a large notch, and those notches correspond to these tabs on the bottom. So all of this only goes back together one way. The other thing that this has, so that helps you put it all back together correctly, on this spindle there's that notch that runs down the length of it. That notch lines up with this tab on the plastic piece that has the contacts. So all of this goes back. It only goes back together one way. So you'd really have to fight it to get it to go back together the wrong way. So what I'm going to do, as I in the back of my mind try to figure out what I'm going to do with a key situation, I'm going to clean all of these tumblers and tabs. Make sure you don't lose these. They want to take off and do their own thing. But these are brass. Be super careful with these. I'm just going to clean them with a wire wheel in a Dremel. And then I'm going to take this spindle here and clean it off. It's got some corrosion. And then probably just get in here with a wire brush, clean as much of the corrosion out of that. And then I'll put it back together. So I've got everything with the ignition key cleaned up. You can see the pins and springs, and here's the spindle. So I just basically hit that with a wire brush, got that all cleaned up. Now I'm going to try and assemble this whole thing. I did some calling around, and I can get a new key made for this for 25 bucks, and also get a spare for 6. That price beats any other alteration that I could do. If I thought I could go to a push button start or switches or anything like that, I'd be into it way more than that. So I'm going to put this back together, and then I'll be able to take this to the locksmith and get that key made for it. So the first thing to do here is put these small springs in, and now that I've got all the crud out of these, my guess is that these springs are really going to want to go flying around. So I'm going to be super careful with that. Make sure I don't lose any. I wouldn't know the first place to go to get a replacement spring. Okay, now, I was going to say, as you can see, I've already lost a spring. There we go. Now, one thing to be aware of when you're tearing these apart is if these are different sizes, different shapes, if you look close here, you'll see that these are all basically the same shape, same dimension. I don't know how all that plays into the final lock, but if these were all different, I would want to keep track of where they go in these different slots. But since they're all the same, I didn't have to worry about that. I just took these and cleaned them up. They're brass again, so be careful. And now I just have to place these in here, and each one of them has this little arm on the side, and that sits over the top of the spring. Okay, now if you press on these and wiggle just a little bit, they should all go down inside of those channels. And when I put this back together, I'm just going to have to do this one pin at a time. Sorry about that. So these all have to go back down inside the channel, and they move pretty freely, but trying to wrestle all of these at the same time down into those channels can be a bit of a challenge, I've discovered. Here is a piece of aluminum that I cut, and it's thinner than the keys, but I can place that down inside of that slot, and that will hold all of these in place. Alright, so that's holding all of those kind of in place. That'll at least give me a good start here. So now this needs to go down in first. I'm going to take a paper clip, and I need to get that retainer clip locked down in there. And there's probably a special tool for this, but with a little bit of patience and ingenuity, I think you can just about make anything work. Okay, there we go. It's just a matter of getting things moved. I'm going to pull that paper clip out. I've got it most of the way in, and just going to spin that around. Again, this is only going to fit in one way. Hopefully I got this started to where it'll go in, because that would be a bummer if I didn't. And now that I look at it, I actually think I got that in upside down. So see if I can get lucky and just spin this around. There we go. Whew. Okay, now if you look on this side, you can see that retainer clip has now sprung into position, and I can take that little piece of cheater aluminum out, and now if I had the right key, that would stay in and that would spin. So there we go. That's all back together. Like I said, I'm going to invest in a key because I think the price of that is pretty reasonable, and that ignition key component is ready to go back together. So my key switch saga is just about ready to come to a close. I've done a couple of change in directions since I started this. Originally I was going to try and find a key to fit this, and I had a local locksmith tell me he'd make me one for about 25 bucks and then $6 on top of that for a spare. I was going to do that, and I got checking online, and I found a couple of people selling keys to match this for about 12 or 13 bucks, which was an even better deal. And the nice thing about these is they have the key number stamped right on top. I thought I'd give the salvage yard one opportunity to kind of see if I could skip all of that. Called them up, and they said, yeah, we've got keys. If you can find one that fits your bike, you can have it for free. Can't beat that. Till he brought out this big turkey basting pan full of keys, and all of the keys in there, and I'd say there were 500 plus, were for Hondas, except for about 5 that were made for Yamaha. So after digging through that bin, I found 2 keys that looked like it fit this bike style, this ignition style. So I pulled those aside, not really knowing why. And then he sent me back to the ignition switch bin that he had in the back. And I guess things were just looking up for me. I managed to find the ignition switch that matched the one key that I had found in that bin. So things went really good from there. I'm getting ready to put this back together. So here's the old one, here's the new one. They're very, very similar, except the only difference really is the contact points here. If you remember, I had pointed out there's a notch in this tumbler setup here that lined up with the contact points here, so it only sits in there one direction. This new one doesn't have that notch in here, but based on what I'm seeing here in alignment, it looks like this is in the same place that notch is. So that indicates the top of the key, and the top of the key in this case being right up here. So I've got the old contact points in the new ignition switch here. Inside the ignition, first thing that needs to be inserted is this ribbed washer. With those raised areas, those make contact with these plastic knobs, and that provides a positive stop as the key is turned into different positions. You can see that there are actually 4 cutouts on that ribbed washer, and they just line up with the tabs down inside of this housing. On top of that, the contact points. Then after that, it's just a matter of taking the contacts here, and you have a large notch and a small notch, and those notches line up to these tabs here and here. So there's a large tab and a small tab. So again, this only goes one direction after you put in the contact points, which only fit in one orientation. So this goes here. You just rotate that until that lines up. When you put that in there, this is going to sit flush. And the last thing to do is take this bracket here and hold all of this stuff together. And rotate that around, because that also sits in only one orientation, like so. And from there, get these screws started. So there we have it. It's all back together. Here's the key, and when you twist this, it's got two positions, well, three technically. Here's off, here's position 1, and here's position 2. So we're all set with that. That's ready to go back on the bike when we start reassembling it.